Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. It's good to have you here. I'm going to talk with a gentleman today that we've connected with a number of times in the past. And he's got his finger on the pulse of things that affect all of us on a daily basis. And that could be our roadways, that could be our infrastructure, that could be housing. I am talking about somebody who has done urban planning for many years, regional planner at the University of Pittsburgh. And he's our man of the year. He's back with us. Richard Golden Bickel Jr. is on the program. Hey, Richard, how are you?
Very good, Steve.
Wonderful to have you back here. I want to share with everyone, if you want to reach out to us, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com is one way, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. Also, 631-319-6275, 631-319-6275. We do have some questions. Before we even get to those, I was talking with somebody the other day about bridges in the United States and how they are, from many points of view, in very poor condition and at risk of some challenges. What's your overall feel on the bridge situation?
Well, bridges are intended to connect different places, and if they start to crumble or have infrastructure issues, that's very serious, and it impedes commuters, it impedes goods movement, and it's also a hazard for people using that facility.
Do you, overall, your feelings on the condition of our bridges in general, do you feel that it's there should be some elevated concern at this point?
Well, the Transportation Research Board in Washington and some of the committees there work with consultants to evaluate the bridges, and each state also does that. So I think they published a conditions report, and the infrastructure numbers used to be, or letters were like a D for the country as a whole. But I think it's gone up better, but that's constant surveillance is necessary.
I don't do politics, never go there, just reporting that the Trump administration is looking at a few individuals to lead the U.S. Department of Transportation. If you could do anything, you have the magic wand, the Richard magic wand, and you could make some changes or at least put attention on something transportation related in the U.S. What do you think would be your priority? What would be at the top of the list? And we don't have to go into detail, but just would it be bridges? Would it be roadways? What would you think?
Well, I think our public transportation systems and Amtrak need more funding to accomplish infrastructure improvements and also potentially expand service. And without that, or without the support of state departments of transportation, the funding will not produce the kinds of benefits that we'd like to see on a unified transportation system.
Gotcha. I know that you're in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh specifically. Actually, I have a friend that lives in Pittsburgh.
Steve.
I'm sorry? Say that again?
I'm in Philadelphia.
Oh, I'm sorry. You at present you are, but you were at the University of Pittsburgh.
Yes, I was. That's where I did undergraduate and graduate study.
That's what I was referring to. Thank you for the clarification. I have a friend who just visited from Pittsburgh, originally from Long Island, so he's back here just a couple of days ago, and we were kind of catching up. And he said there was something about a strike looming for the SEPTA. That's what he said. Yeah, what do you know about that?
It seems that one of the unions that deals with suburban transit, not the regional rail system, is agitating for a strike. Often these things get settled at the last minute. I haven't had an update, but as of last night, they were still supposedly negotiating.
Wow. I know I understand it might be in the suburbs of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Delaware County in particular, and areas near there because that's where a lot of the public transit service, not rail, is located.
When funding is dispersed or where it's decided where it's going to go, what usually is the first spot? Is it the roadway, the condition of the roadways? What usually gets the lion's share when budgeting is available let's say in a city?
Well, the funding decisions are made through the metropolitan planning organizations. And in the case of the Philadelphia region, it's the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. And it's a meeting of various officials from the membership of the MPO, as they're called, and they make a decision and vote on what's called a Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. The TIP contains all the projects that are going to be funded in the next 6-year period, and it includes federal, state, and local resources to accomplish the plan. And the plan is done separately. That's a regional plan prepared by local officials and planners, and that is the guide for the TIP.
Gotcha. So can you still hear us?
Yes.
Oh, it was weird. There's a little beep on there. You know what? Let's go to an email. This is from Dave checks in from Dallas, and he says, and by the way, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com is how he reached us. He says, what type of bachelor's degree for urban planning would you suggest? Somebody told me that.
And after realizing I wasn't going to be a doctor, I took an urban geography course and ended up at the planning graduate school at Pitt. There are many ways you can get there, but you need to at least have a basic understanding of population and employment, a little bit of economics, and learn how to interact with people to explain concepts that they might not care for, because the NIMBY syndrome, not in my backyard, ends up affecting lots of plan implementation projects because people are threatened by new things or by the potential construction impacts and noise and other things that come with a project. So you may have a great idea, but you've got to sell it. And by that I mean you've got to work with the local officials. You've got to listen to the citizens in particular, because they're the ones who will be living with the project. And you have to have an attitude of cooperation and coordination, not dictating.
Does the not in my backyard, I don't want to call it a syndrome, but the concept of it and those unhappy with things popping up in their close geographic area, does that really, really pose a major problem with development? In other words, is that taken seriously, and do when it comes to planning, are the brakes tapped because of that?
It has a significant impact, and local officials may like a project, but if a lot of people show up at a public meeting and start working with their neighbors and others to oppose a project, local officials may back away from it. The congestion pricing issue in New York started as a good idea, was almost adopted, and the governor backed away from it. Now she's back with a new proposal that lowers the fee, and it seems like it could be the basis for a compromise to implement congestion pricing in New York.
Wow. Just got something here from Kevin, Royal Palm Beach, Florida. He says, what are your thoughts on self-driving cars?
Well, electric cars are doing better than I thought, and self-driving cars were doing okay, but then they had a fatal accident in San Francisco, and they've had other problems. And so it's an interesting idea, but it's got some implementation barriers that need to be overcome, one of which is the confidence of the people who would be sitting in the car, especially if it's a taxi or something like that, and they're being driven around without a driver.
Yeah, there have been, in my opinion, really great advancements in self-driving cars. My friend has a Tesla, and he'll set it on the self-driving mode, but it is not foolproof. And there's been many times where, and he's very particular, he watches everything while it's driving, where he's got to grab the wheel and take a little bit of action. So I based on what I see so far personally, I think we need more time in development. It's just we're not there yet where we can be just relax and have a conversation while the car does its thing.
Yeah, about a year or two ago was the peak of interest in self-driving cars. It's leveled off a bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes when it levels off, that's where the innovations can start to take hold.
I 100% agree with you. I right on target, Richard. I feel the same exact way. There was some excitement, fascination with it about a year or so ago, and it seems to kind of have tapered off. And I think that for good reason, more development. Fabio checks in from San Jose and says, and this is in line with what we're talking about in terms of education. He says, what does it take to be a good urban/city planner? What qualities should one have to be successful in this field?
Well, you need a technical background. As I mentioned earlier, population employment numbers, which you need an awareness of the issues that are faced by cities and towns, housing, transportation, land use, and you can have a variety of backgrounds. Engineering is a good background for some people. Having had trouble with chemistry, I knew engineering would not be for me either. So I found social sciences much more interesting and understandable. And I think anyone trying to advance in their planning career should find other planners to talk to their academic advisor, and come up with a game plan of how to get there.
As you look back, what do you feel, Richard, was some of the most rewarding parts of urban planning?
One was doing a community plan for my first job, a small neighborhood in one of the townships, and the minority community felt that nobody would listen to them. So I was assigned to do this little study that reconnected their neighborhood to the surrounding street pattern. And it was very rewarding to feel like I did something that was beneficial. On the other hand, I've done some studies where I thought the work was okay, and then go to a public meeting and the NIMBY folks come out, and that kills the project.
Do you feel when you look back, maybe you drive, you're navigating through certain areas that you had a hand in terms of the planning? Do you feel that sense of pride?
Well, sometimes I feel a sense of disappointment or missed opportunities. But if you do work in an area and you live near some of these areas, it's helpful to see what happened after 20 years or 30 years of thinking about the issues. And cities and towns are always changing, sometimes not immediately visible, but the people who move in, the issues that they're confronting, and housing is now a big issue again. It went away for a while, but now it's affordable housing is a key issue in cities and towns around the country. Transportation is always an issue, and the issue is, you're going to just build highways, or you're going to try to have a multimodal system of public transit, highways, bicycles, pedestrian paths, all those things together.
It's more and more I hear that when they try to put major roads through very urban areas, it goes bad. It doesn't work. There are challenges. It's almost counterproductive. Any thoughts on that?
Well, there is a grant program in the Transportation Act reinvesting in communities, and it's intended to provide funds to correct some of the mistakes that were made earlier, where highways were forced through communities and divided them, and it's not good for the local residents. It's a very bad thing. Even though the transportation project might be good, it's got to be designed to meet a variety of needs and to avoid negative impacts.
Gotcha. Yeah, a lot of times, do you feel that maybe it's the negative impact is not truly considered when this is taking place?
Well, in the old days, that would be the case, but given the environmental impact study requirements for spending federal funds, I think they're addressed much more diligently than they were in the past. And the highways that were proposed by, I'm blocking on his name, how could I forget, the fellow who was in charge of transportation in New York for a long time, those highways would probably not have been able to advance.
You're not referring to Robert Moses, are you?
Oh, yes, Robert Moses.
Gotcha. Yeah. There's a study in itself. I know we've talked about him in the past, and for those unfamiliar, he was a major developer in the New York area, especially with the suburbs, and created there's roads named after him. And as I learned from you, embarrassingly, I live on Long Island and had no idea that he intentionally made the highways, these are major highways, by the way, very curvy and always winding to, as I understand from you, slow the flow of traffic down. What was the whole concept there and why that was being done?
Well, he believed in an idea of making highways more beautiful, but at the same time, he designed the bridges, the overpasses, to very low height to dissuade trucks and public transit vehicles. He was a highway guy, and if you drive some of these parkways that come out of Queens
Sure.
into Nassau County and Suffolk County, you can see the bridges. They're very low.
Yep.
And so he had tremendous influence. He was not an elected official. He was a bureaucrat in one sense. He worked in different administrations and was close to Nelson Rockefeller and some other people, and he had tremendous influence. Today he would have much more difficulty in implementing some of his concepts, but in those days he rammed these things through with the support of key political people to accomplish a design that was very highway oriented.
You know what I find fascinating? I'm sure he had a hand in the Northern State, Southern State Parkway, right?
Right.
Two separate roads, very windy, very curvy. However, the Robert Moses Causeway, the road with his name on it, and I don't know if it was named in his honor or he put his name on it, is a straight run. It goes from the South Shore, pretty much the South Shore of Long Island, to the Fire Island area. There's a wonderful bridge there. But my point here is there's no curves. It's almost, I believe, a straight run.
Yeah, in that case, maybe that was the best design because you're near the water and your people are trying to get to the beach and things like that. So
Sure. Yeah.
He had some sensitivity.
Yeah, I guess, but but then again, do we know he put his name on it, or is this after the fact? When he wasn't here, I don't know.
For any students out there, the book to try to read, because it's a gigantic 1,200 pages with footnotes, is The Power Broker by Robert Caro. And that won the Pulitzer Prize. And it really talks about his career, his preferences, etc.
Wow. Learn a lot here when we get together. I just saw in the news that Connecticut just got a $291 million boost for transportation infrastructure projects and such. And I looked a little bit closer, and sure enough, there's quite a few $1 million going to a bridge replacement study in the state of Connecticut. Randomly, I'm just throwing it out there that this just got approved literally a couple of days ago. At least it was reported a few days ago. It's funny that we just started talking about bridges today.
Right.
And I'm looking here too, as you said, $172 million for track improvements for the rail lines in Connecticut, New Haven, Bridgeport, Stratford, all around those areas too.
That's good that there's funding for both highways and transit.
I never think of it that way, but a solid balance between the two. Interesting. Always learn a lot. Got to tell you, Richard, you really have your hand on the pulse of all of this, and you're not doing what you were exactly doing previously, but I find it fascinating that you're still fascinated. So I think it's in your DNA. You feel that way?
Yeah, it sounds like somebody's trying to call.
I don't see. Yeah, there was somebody here and then they disappeared. Either way, next time, instant feedback, steve@gmail.com if you want to connect with us. Any kind of questions about the education for urban planning or just the topic in general. Richard, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.